Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time it is a review of the 2019 horror film, Us. Now this is a film that I had been looking forward to ever since it was announced because I was a big fan of Get Out, a film that I was leery of before I saw it because of the overwhelming amount of praise, and the film lived up to it to me. I agreed with the majority of the critical acclaim. I loved Get Out. I thought it was a excellent film, and for me personally, one of the best films from the year that it was released in, and one of the best horror films I've seen the past few years. So once the trailer dropped for Us, and I saw that, this film skyrocketed near the top of the list for my most anticipated films of 2019. It was an excellent trailer. Really showcased the visuals well. I love the way it was edited. I love the music that was used in the trailer, the remix of Five on it, and the concept intrigued me. And it looked like it might be another instant classic like Get Out was. And sadly, it isn't. At least for me personally. Us was disappointing. It wasn't a total misfire. It wasn't a piece of shit. It isn't a bad film. But for me personally, it's fairly meh. It's fairly average. It's mediocre. And I know that word has a negative connotation to it. A lot of people look at mediocre as like oh, it's bad, but mediocre just means something that's meh. That's in the middle. And it's a perfect way to me personally to describe Us, because it is the epitome of a mixed bag. And this video is my attempt to try to unpack my thoughts on Us and why I feel that way about the film. And before I start unpacking, I want to make this point. If you like the film or you love the film, I think that's great. I have no issue with that whatsoever. It just further showcases why different opinions are what makes this world interesting and what keeps it that way. So I have no issue with that. And this video is not an attempt from me to try to convince you otherwise. That's not what this is about. That being said, let's start unpacking. So, before I get into the issues that I have with the film that prevent it from living up to its full potential, I want to discuss the aspects of Us that I feel really work and really click and are genuinely brilliant and great in their own right. So the first thing I want to mention is Jordan Peele's direction. He has already shown that he is a visionary, that he has a really great eye for detail, and the film Us is no exception. It looks great. Jordan Peele's direction is not an issue or a problem at all. There's no sophomore slump here in terms of the direction. The direction in Us is every bit as impressive as the direction in Get Out. Visually stunning. He's just a really great director when it comes to really making visuals that pop and really getting the most out of a low budget. The film only cost about 20 million, and it looks like it easily cost more than that because of how well Jordan Peele directs the film. He also does a masterful job getting the most out of his actors. There's some that I don't think he was able to get that much out of, but I don't blame him for that. And it's one of those things where I think when a lot of people kind of compare him to Hitchcock and some of these other visionary directors, I actually think it's a fair comparison, because he has really started off very strong and has already shown with two films that he not only knows what he's doing, but he excels at it. So I'm glad I saw the film in the theater, and I'm glad that I supported the film in the long run, because not only because I got to see another great looking film by Jordan Peele, but also regardless of my overall feelings of the film, about the film Us, I'm glad that audiences are giving it a shot. I'm glad audiences are going to see the film. I'm glad it's doing well in the box office, because a film like this making money is the right message to send to stubborn studios who only care about the bottom line when it comes to what type of films to continue to make. And if a film like this surpasses expectations in terms of its box office and does decent, if not really great business like it's doing right now, that sends a message to these stubborn studios that audiences do want somewhat original and somewhat unique content. Saying that this film is 100% original is a lie. Most films nowadays aren't. It's near impossible to do so. But it's still more original and still more unique than another installment in the Halloween franchise, or the Friday the 13th franchise, or another Nightmare on Elm Street remake. So I appreciate Jordan Peele's efforts to make something that stands on its own, and it's its own franchise, it's its own film, especially in the horror genre, because it's getting a bit stale lately, especially when it comes to theatrical films, because you have a lot of big money makers lately are retellings of stories that have already been told before and adapted, like Stephen King's It, or films like Halloween 2018, which is more of the same shit, but on a different day and a different year. So, yeah, Jordan Peele, his direction in this is every bit as excellent as Get Out's direction was, and definitely one of the best looking films that I've seen in 2019 to date, which I haven't seen a whole lot of them, because there really weren't that many 2019 films that I was like, man, I really, 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 really want to see it, other than Us, which is why I went and saw it. And there are some other 2019 films that I'm looking forward to, but Us was the first one on the list. Another aspect of the film that I want to point out that is noteworthy is the cinematography, because it ties right into the direction by Jordan Peele, the cinematography by Mike Guilakis. It is absolutely stunning and gorgeous, and really gets so much out of Santa Cruz and all these other locations in the film. And when the film needs to look vibrant and colorful, it manages to do so. When it needs to be dark and mysterious, it also manages to do that. Really emphasizes the landscape and the lighting and all of these other elements of filmmaking. From a technical standpoint, Us is great. I can't really think of any technical aspects of the production that the film lacks in. Direction, cinematography, the editing by Nicholas Mansour. Sorry, Nicholas. Nicholas Mansour. That's also excellent. It's efficient. It's not too flashy, but at the same time, there's enough talent behind the editing that it elevates the film to a level that it wouldn't be without that particular form of editing and that particular talent behind it. And the score. The score is spectacular by Michael Abels. I cannot sing enough praises for this score. I loved this score. Not only just the remix of Five on It, which initially was not in the final cut of the film. It was added into the final cut of the film. Well, it wasn't, I mean, semantics. It wasn't in the initial cut of the film. It was added to the final cut of the film by Jordan Peele after a test screening, and due to the reaction that a lot of audiences had to the trailer and the remix. So we put it in the climax, and that was a really wise decision because it's a great remix. But the rest of the score is equally as impressive, especially the choir orchestral score. I love that bit. It's featured prominently in the opening credits, and it's also featured quite a bit throughout the film. It's another one of those scores that really adds a lot of mood and atmosphere to the proceedings. It enhances and emphasizes certain sequences with its inclusion. It's a really great modern score. Easily one of the best horror scores I've heard in a while. I love the choir stuff. It reminded me a lot of Jerry Goldsmith's work in The Omen, and I think that was intentional. And overall, it's just a really nice score to listen to, which fits with a film that's nice to look at. It is. It's a nice film to look at too. Production design is also on point. Uh, it definitely looks like a high quality production. It's not an issue. Uh, the cast for the most part is solid. There are a couple members of the cast that I didn't quite care for, and I didn't really feel that they delivered the best performances or were the best casting choices, and I'll go more in depth on that when I get to my personal cons for us. But when it comes to pros, I mean, the lead, Lupita Nyong'o, wow. I mean, this is a standout, just really impressive, great performance. Dual layered, had all these different multi-layered performance. Um, it's not easy to play two roles, to play two characters who are essentially the same person in multiple different ways so convincingly. And she absolutely nails it. Her performance is Adelaide and Red. Red, uh, she has a really weird vocal inflection, and she has these weird movements that she makes too. They're very unnerving, and I really thought that character could have really come across as completely laughable if you didn't have the right actress to portray the role, and that's not what happened. Unlike other instances with some of the other characters in the film where it did come across a little silly, here it was really close to being silly and kind of dumb, but she really went all out and managed to make it work with this raspy, throaty performance. I also really enjoyed the performances by the young actors, Shahadi, Wright Joseph, who played Zora, as well as Umbre, Evan Alex, who played Jason, and Pluto. Uh, they were not your typical kid actors who can't act and don't have any charisma and don't know how to uh, really carry themselves on film, and are usually nothing more than glorified extras that are given way too much screen time. That's not the case with these two. They really handled themselves well. I also liked Elisabeth Moss. I think she did a really underrated job because I don't think enough people are praising her performance, and I think more people should be giving her more props for it. She does a great job playing an obnoxious rich girl, and does an equally great job playing her double, which is Dahlia, which is very has a that character has a tragic undertone to her that I really do feel is quite effective. Then there's a few other actresses and other people involved in the cast and crew. But the two other main ones are ones that I want to talk about them when I talk about the things that didn't work for the film. Because if I talk about them now, I'll just get a little I'll get off track, and I don't want to do that. So, um, another thing I really liked about the film, I didn't mind the concept. I mean, the overall idea of spoiler of underground facilities with various different clones of denizens and citizens of America is not that bad. It's not a bad idea, and I definitely did find a couple sequences in the film pretty suspenseful and intense. There is the moment when you realize that there's more than one series of clones in the film. I thought that was really effective. Um, and there are a lot of really nice callbacks and nods to other films from the past, specifically horror films. In the beginning, there's like when the film is showing what essentially is a Hands Across America commercial from the 80s. You, on the shelf that the TV is on, you see VHS tapes. So there's actually a VHS tape for Chud, which was really that was I'm really it's really nice to see that Jordan Peele he threw that out there. He really dug a little deep there and threw out a deep cut with Chud. And you also have the Goonies, which there is a line of dialogue from the Goonies that's used in the film. I don't remember exactly which one it is though. I think is it Our Time Down? It's Our Time Down Here. I don't know if it was that one or not. But it was a quote from Corey Feldman's character Mouth. And there's also a VHS for Nightmare on Elm Street, and there's little other callbacks throughout it. Like for instance, the Lost Boys, because the film takes place for the most part in Santa Cruz, and there's a flashback scene that takes place in the late 80s, and they mention, oh, they're filming a movie over there at the Carousel, which is the Lost Boys, which I thought that was fun. So there are some nice callbacks here and there when it comes to the screenplay. Uh, the social commentary, there are some parts of it that I thought were pretty effective, especially the sequence near the end where it was another example of just really great editing too, where there are sequences that are intercut with one another of the people who live above the tethered, so to speak. So the people who live above, who are not the clones who live below, and it's edited together in a way that shows you how much better the people up top have their lives and how they're living their lives like everything, there's nothing bad or anything that's going on beneath them. That was a really well done sequence and a good bit of social commentary that was making some nice statements about class and so on and so forth. So, and about the whole thing where where people who are up above, they're oblivious to what's going on beneath them. So that was a nice a bit of social commentary. And there were a few lines of dialogue I liked. Was specifically, I liked the one where Winston Duke's character says, when he's looking at all of the tethered holding hands, he's like, this is like some fucked up piece of performance art. So I like that. So there's some fun quotes here and there. There's some nice little bits of some audio gags. Nice use of Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys, as well as Fuck the Police by NWA. Uh, there's some nice little bloody bits here and there. Not as many fuck you moments, like, fuck yeah moments, but it it's the violence is I don't know if I would say it's effective. It's it's there. It's not necessarily a problem. I don't think the film needed to be gorier or anything like that, because that's not the type of film that this is. But yeah, those are my overall pros for the film. And as you can see, I had a lot to list. So it's not a film that I don't like in some capacity. I like it all right. I just didn't love the film, and here are the reasons why. Now, in this particular part, I'm going to get into really massive, major spoilers, because in order to really articulate my thoughts on why I feel certain things and certain aspects and elements of Us don't work and why they hurt the film, I have to go into major spoilers. So for those of you who haven't seen the film yet and don't want it spoiled, I'm just going to give you my quick thoughts, just do a little recap of my overall feelings on the film. I liked the film, but I didn't love it. I just felt that there was issues with pacing that tied into some of the characters, and I did not care at all for the way the film ended, and I felt that it wasn't as effective with its balance of horror and comedy as Get Out was, or other films that are trying to blend the two together. So overall, I liked the film, but I didn't love it. So hopefully, those of you who are leaving now, you will come back later and watch the rest of the video when you've seen the film. So then you can hear my uncut, uncensored thoughts on the aspects of the film that I didn't like and why I didn't like them. So now, diving deep into the spoilers, I'm going to start with the elephant in the room, the ending. This ending was terrible. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not going to apologize. I don't need to apologize. There's no reason to do that. This is just my opinion. I thought this ending was terrible. This ending, unlike the twist in Get Out, which I honestly didn't see coming and I thought was handled really well, this was predictable. This was lame. And when I saw it in the theater, it made my eyes roll back into my head so hard that they might as well have popped out my ass. Because it's just such a... I mean, it's one of those endings that you've seen time and time again. You've seen these twists. They've been done over and over and over. It's an overdone type of twist. And I really thought that Jordan wouldn't go that route, because he didn't go that route with Get Out, and I thought he wouldn't do that, but he did. And that was honestly a big slip up on his part, because that ending, that twist, it honestly unravels so much of the film, because it leaves too many questions, and it's one of those endings where you're just like, really? What the fuck? And if you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. So the ending, it deals with the twist that I saw coming, and so did my friend who saw the movie with me, and so did most people who've seen films like this. The twist is that Adelaide, she's not the real Adelaide. In the past, at the boardwalk, when she went into the haunted house, she's the one that got choked out, and the real Adelaide got trapped underground, and the Adelaide that we've been following throughout the entire movie, who's protecting her family and all of this, so on and so forth, well, she's actually Red. Like, she's actually the one that was living underground. it's one of those twists that not only did I see coming, not only is it lame, but it's not even remotely necessary. What? Why? Why is it necessary? Some people say, oh, it's another layer of social commentary. It didn't need any more layers. In fact, I think the film had too many layers because it's trying to do all these different things with social commentary, but because it's trying to do more than just a couple, like Get Out, for instance, which focused heavily on race and class, when with Us, it's trying to do race and class and then other aspects of social commentary. It's trying to do all these different things, so it's not really able to be as effective or as efficient as it could be because of that, because it's spreading itself too thin. And that's very evident with this ending. Yeah, the Hands Across America thing, which I don't know what the fuck Jordan Peele was thinking with that, because it's silly. It's not scary. It's silly. And what's the point? I still don't know what the plan was for the tethered. So they're going to kill the people that they were clones of, and then they're going to hold hands across America? That was the plan? And the film never establishes how many people were cloned and how many people weren't. And it's insinuated that it's all Americans. But why? And how? And how are you going to fit 1 billion Americans or more in underground facilities? They could barely fit as many people as they did in the facility underneath the boardwalk at Santa Cruz. I'm supposed to buy that they're going to fit billions of Americans underground? Our sewer system isn't that large. I don't think we could fit that many fucking people or that many clones. Let alone feed them all with just rabbits. And not only that all these underground bases would have been hidden successfully, and no single American would have ever found them beforehand, other than Adelaide in the late 80s. I mean, especially when the one in Santa Cruz is the only thing that's preventing anybody from going down there is a fucking hidden room. I guess like it's a back room and an escalator. But it's an allegory, get it? Because there's going down, going down into the rabbit hole. I get it. Okay, I get that. But this is an instance where Peele is focusing too much on allegories and metaphors and to the detriment of the overall story. Especially to the plausibility of it. And I know, you're supposed to suspend your disbelief. Trust me, I know that. I did that throughout most of this movie. Get Out has a really absurd concept of brain transplants and shit. But it didn't spread itself too thin. It wasn't trying to be bigger than it needed to be. And it's unfortunately one of Us's biggest problems, is that it should have done less. Make the scope smaller, because then it enables you to have more of a margin for error. So if you have a smaller scope, you don't necessarily have to do everything. You don't have to have like everything work and everything click. If you have a larger scope, you have so much more that you have to connect. You have so many more things that you have to get right. And it makes the mistakes and the failures all the more noticeable. They're glaringly obvious. That's why a lot of Larry Cohen's films, or films like Chud, for instance, they're not, oh, it's all across America. No. They're just like, it's in one town, that's what's going on here, and there's some weird shit going on underground. That's honestly what this film should have done. It should have just taken place in Santa Cruz and had all the characters in Santa Cruz and just focused solely on that, and an underground base in Santa Cruz and clones of some residents in Santa Cruz, as Santa Cruz was like the initial testing ground for this government experience, this government experiment that they fucked up. That's really what, in my opinion, that would have made the film so much better. And none of the hands across America shit, because it's just fucking silly. I'm sorry. People just handle hands across America. I know it's supposed to be metaphor or whatever the hell it is. And it is a pretty good look, a pretty beautiful image at the end with the mountains and people holding hands. But it's one of those things that it looks good, but it doesn't work in terms of storytelling or in concept because it's silly. And that ties right into one of another huge problem I have with the film: the tone. It's really off. So there are moments where it's unnerving and it's actually legitimately suspenseful and creepy. But then there's other moments where it's the complete opposite. And it's just awkward. Like, for instance, when you have the clones, like Tim Heidecker and Winston Duke's characters' clones, and they can't speak, so they're just going, like, they're just sounding like just braying cows or something. It's awkward and just dumb. And then when you have other shots, like for example, Lupita Nyong'o's character Red, she can be genuinely unsettling. But then the other kids, I mean, you have the other kids acting like he's a fucking pet and like rubbing his head on her leg and purring and growling and shit and crawling around on all fours. And then you got the double of the daughter who's got this stupid smirk on her face, which is just laughable. I was the only one that thought it was laughable. There were multiple people in the theater that were laughing at it. And then you got, like, you know, the holding hands across America thing while people were getting stabbed and shit on a security camera tape. And it's one of those things where it just doesn't really find the right tone. I mean, and it's trying to be really serious in the climax, but then earlier before, you got Tim Heidecker, you know, and you got this other sort of just, it's like one of those things, like, pick one tone to stick with it, or if you're trying to have a dark comedy, then make the comedy actually better than mostly miss. Because that's honestly another problem I have with the film. I thought the comedy was way worse than Get Out. And way worse than a lot of Jordan Peele's other work. I only laughed a few times. There were a couple lines of dialogue that I thought were decent in terms of the jokes. But most of the time, the lines and the comedy fell flat on its ass. And there were moments where the comedy took away from the horror. So it's trying to be, the scene is clearly trying to be somewhat suspenseful or scary, and then the comedy comes in and it just makes everything lukewarm. So that's a big reason why the film isn't really as effective as it could be when it comes to its blend of comedy and horror. And, you know, that's a hard mix to get right. So I don't blame Jordan Peele for not being as successful with that. You know, I do blame him because it ultimately is his fault. But at the same time, you know, people make mistakes, and it's one of those things where, hey man, I get it. It's rough. It's a hard thing to get right. You'll get him next time. Another thing I definitely feel is quite evident when it comes to this movie is that Jordan Peele didn't have nearly as much time to craft this story as he did with Get Out. He spent years on Get Out. It was a labor of love, and it showed. With this, it feels like Us as a movie that he had an idea, but he wasn't able to flesh it out as fully as he might have wanted to because he ran out of time. So he had to throw in these other things and hope they landed, and not really put as much of a heavy focus on certain things as maybe he should have. And that's why it kind of feels kind of, and also another reason why it feels unbalanced is because it just feels like a movie where, okay, worked on it, gave it a shot, had an idea, but didn't have as much time to really breathe as much life into it as possible. So it's kind of half dead. And the last thing I want to mention when it comes to the film is couple characters, couple performances, and the pacing. So when it comes to the couple characters that I really wasn't feeling at all, Gabe, Winston Duke's character. Winston Duke. He was fine in Black Panther, but here he shows that this is not he's this is not his comfort zone, and not only that, he's not ready for this. He's not ready for this kind of role because his line delivery in this was awful. There were one or two lines like the one I mentioned, like this looks like some fucked up piece of performance art. That was a decent line delivery. That's a big reason why that line actually clicked and worked for me. It made me laugh and was memorable. But the other lines that he had, terrible line delivery. Like no presence, awkward, just I maybe that was the point, but it just sounded amateurish. It sounded total amateur hour. And Tim Heidecker, I just can't take him seriously in anything because you see him in Tim and Eric, and I guess I'm typecasting him, but it's just the way he carries himself is very comedic, like naturally, just very comedic and so on and so forth. So when he's trying to be intimidating, when he's one of the tethered, that those scenes fall completely apart because it's just not believable. And he doesn't really put that much of an effort into the intimidation either. It's like he's still doing a skit or something. Um, yeah, I didn't feel that he really worked. Um, didn't care for his character and either one. And I feel the film would have been stronger if it had a different actor who would be able to actually, I don't know, be somewhat intimidating with that. And it just, to me, he stuck out like a sore thumb. And Winston Duke, I mean, he doesn't really do that much. Even the death that he does get, it's really weird. Like, he kills his clone by killing him with, like, the boat motor, but the way it's shot is like an up close shot or something, and you don't really see what kills the guy, so it's kind of confusing. So yeah, that's one aspect of the direction that I thought was like, what, that could have been done better. But okay, so I talked about the characters. And even though, speaking of characters, even though I like the performance by Lupita Nyong'o, when you find out that she's not really the real Adelaide, it hurts the film because it hurts the character. Because then you're like, well, why should I give a shit about this character if I watch this film again? Because I know that she's really just one of the underground clones who choked out a little girl and locked her up and left her essentially to die. So that doesn't really help at all. And I don't really care for Winston Duke, and the kids, they're fine, but they're not strong enough to carry the film. So that's a problem I have with the film as well, is the characters. Ultimately, at the end of the day, they're kind of weak, especially compared to the characters in Get Out. And that is another reason why the pacing really suffers. Film starts out strong. And for the first 15, 30, maybe 40 minutes, it's got me. But then it becomes kind of a dull chase film with a weird tone that's neither funny nor really that scary. And then you get to the ending, and you're exhausted already because you're like, oh, I just should have ended at this point, and you just feel like it's just been a total drag. Probably how most people feel about this video since it's over 40 minutes. I'm sorry. Like I was not kidding when I said I have a lot of shit to unpack when it comes to us. And speaking of some more things I want to unpack, I'm going to rapid fire a few more things when it comes to the script that I felt really fell flat. Um, the inconsistencies in the abilities of the tethered, that really made me go, okay, that's that really. So for instance, you have one of the Jason. There's a scene where you see in the trailer and you see in the film where the Jason, he walks backwards and his tethered walks backwards with him. So every move he makes, the tethered also makes. And that leads to the tether getting burned alive. Burned to death. Why is this only an ability that Jason seems to have? Why don't other people who are connected to the tethered have the same ability? Later in the film, you have Adelaide fighting Red, and Red knows her every move, seemingly, and able to counter it. Why didn't one of them think about doing the same thing that Jason did? I already mentioned the implausibility of billions of clones, a Hands Across America plot, or whatever the plan was for the Tever to take over. Doesn't make much sense. Then you have the whole twist just ruining things with Adelaide's character. So she speaks like the way she does because she got choked out. And it damaged her voice box, apparently. And she's the only one that's able to speak because she was from the upworld, so to speak. Okay, but why did she come up with this master plan? Am I supposed to buy that she came up with the master plan because she went crazy, just like everybody else? If that's the case, that's a lazy excuse. That's a lazy excuse for lazy writing. Right there. Why would she have such a master plan to kill all these people and so on and so forth on top? Why would she lead this revolution if she is not actually a true member of the tethered from the start? I just don't get that. I don't understand. It just, the only thing I can think of is, oh well, she was driven mad and that's it. And that's just not a good enough reason for me. Also, why did she get killed so easily? She's spending all this time countering at the Reds' moves, and all it takes is a surprise stab in the chest, and that's it? Is this because, oh, the ballet edits and things that were thrown in there, is they were following the choreography of the ballet, and the other girl, Red, took the, you know, took a different direction and did a different move? Is that what it's supposed to do? And also with the rabbits, like, I guess they reproduce themselves, so because rabbits and overpopulation, which is another theme that's just thrown out in this movie, but doesn't really have a lot of weight to it. It doesn't really delve that deep into it either. Oh, and the 11-11 thing, which I know people probably didn't mention. Yeah, there are elements of this movie that are just chock full of foreshadowing. An ambulance toy that Jason seems to use quite a bit. There's an ambulance near the end of the movie. The 11-11 subliminal messaging or whatever. The spider, which ties into the itsy bitsy spider theme that Adelaide was whistling when she went into the haunted fun house, the Vision Quest house in the flashback. I get it. There are foreshadowing elements. It's nice for visuals, but That's not enough to make a film great. You have social commentary. Good. Not enough to make a film great. But that's just me personally. I know a lot of critics have just been blown away by the film because, oh my god, it has social commentary, so therefore it's a masterpiece. But I need more than social commentary. I need a plot that's engaging. I need characters that are engaging. If it's doing a horror comedy, I need the horror and the comedy to be equally effective. And that doesn't happen with us. So, yeah, that's my long-winded thoughts on Us. I did not think I was going to take this long to talk about this movie, but it just shows you how passionate I am about films, period, and also how much I was disappointed by this movie because it took me this long to get all of my thoughts and my feelings out of my basement. So I hope you all enjoyed it regardless. And I don't know what else to say about the film except if I were to rate it out of 5 stars, I would give it 3 out of 5 stars. I liked it okay. I think it's an alright movie. At best, it's a time waster for me. And that's disappointing. To me, it's easily 2 steps down from Get Out. And that being said, though, I'm still looking forward to Jordan Peele's next film. Because, hey, even the greatest filmmakers, they don't keep knocking stuff out of the park one after another. They slip. They tumble, you know? It doesn't mean that they're incapable of having another hit again. And there is potential here. I just felt it didn't quite live up to its fullest. But hey, there's still brilliant aspects to this, and there's still things that are worthwhile. And that's why I am still in Jordan Peele's corner. So anyway, thank you for watching my review. And as always, I will see you later. See ya.